The baller himself is on the screen. That's Charlamagne, my God. That's my man. I assume on this one I can just shut up and do nothing.
I think you can. I can shut up too.
No, you're the moderator. I do want to say in a serious note, Charlamagne doesn't sleep. Like people sleep on Charlamagne. Like they think, oh, he's funny and he's entertaining. This brother is like a prophet. This guy is smart, wicked smart. He owns a publishing imprint with a book. They offered him a book deal, Mayor. He's like, no, I don't want the money. Right. I don't want an advance. What I want is a book imprint with a mainstream book publisher, so I can give voice to other brilliant minds. What's that girl's name? Charlamagne, the young lady. She's so smart. Tamika Mallory. Tamika Mallory. She's so smart. He gave her a book deal. I mean, he empowered himself to create a platform. Again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to create economic plumbing for the underserved. He just by creating a publishing platform, he's creating plumbing, a plug-and-play system. He did the same thing with Breakfast Club. Look at all the people he's given opportunity to be hosts, co-hosts. Podcast Network, Black Effect Network, which he owns 51% of or more, along with a partnership with iHeart. He's got a media company that he just started. He's got a fast food restaurant that he started in his hometown. Is it Monk's?
Monk's Corner, yes, sir.
North Carolina. This is a bad brother, and he will call me on a Saturday or a Sunday and prick me on something, like, push me on something. I'm trying to relax, and he wants to talk about the future of us, and he's the reason that I wrote the first business plan for America, which I then went on Breakfast Club to talk about. That was over a year ago, and he's the reason that I really began to evolve my philosophy on these things, and thank you for pushing me. Charlamagne, I'm honored to know you.
Man, no, the feeling is mutual. I'm just honored to be able to, tap into you, as a mentor and just, somebody who has done this for a long time and is, economically empowered so many of us, whether folks know it or not. So, I just love to be able to call you on a Saturday to get that information, my brother.
My deep honor. One of these days, people are going to recognize that you are much more than the top radio personality in the country. But I know you don't.
I don't care if they do or not, because
I know that's what I was about to say. That I know you don't care.
Like I'm about that action. I rather stay low and keep firing. They always say if you build in silence, people can't stop what you're doing. So I don't have any. I don't care what people think about me in any way, shape, or form. I let the results speak.
Well, with that said, I guess John, shut up. So now we can get to it. Charlamagne, it's a privilege, man, to be able to rap with you on this Friday and a very important topic, Dream Forward, in this panel, redefining wealth, achieving economic freedom and self-determination. And I don't think there's a better individual between us that, represents that very well. I followed your career very closely, being from North Philadelphia myself, and so very familiar with your radio history. And here you are now, as John said, one of the top radio personalities, but not only that, but a cultural voice, right, within Black America, within America, period. You go around on social media, you see your comments, you see how much you engaged. I've learned a lot from you on the early days of Twitter, so it's definitely a privilege to be able to have this important conversation with you right now.
Thank you, Jabari. I appreciate that.
Hey, man, listen, thank you. And listen, I want to open this conversation up, man. And the way I like to run my panels is that it's more engaging. I can't see who all is watching, so it's like a conversation between me and you. But, when I talk about economic empowerment all the time and I'm reporting on it, there's various definitions of it. But I like to ask you and start this panel off just with that. When you hear that phrase, economic empowerment, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
For me, economic empowerment just means that, you have a skill set, you've tapped into your skill set and you found ways to, profit off of your skill set and not just profit off your skill set as an individual. That skill set has enabled you to build something that other people can profit off as well. One of my favorite mottos is if, whatever you build only benefits you, then it's not big enough. I think it's one thing to empower yourself as an individual, but it's another, to have a skill set or have some type of, talent, or just to build something that helps, other people as well. So that's what economic empowerment means to me. Something that helps you as an individual, create something not just for yourself but for others.
Yeah. Well, listen, this was supposed to be 2 or 3 other people on this thing, but it turned into a fireside chat between us. So again, man, so much to cover and so much, so little time. But listen, I think it's fair to say that you have a nice income. You made a nice bit of money, and I cover that for a living at Forbes.
God is good. My mom told me a long time ago that was very freeing for me. My mom told me that you've accomplished. 'Cause my mom is a school teacher from Moncks Corner, South Carolina, and my father was in the construction, and he always had a hustle, whether it was a fish market in Moncks Corner or something. But my mom told me that you've accomplished more than everybody in the family has, but just be happy to be making a living.
Absolutely.
That's how I always carry it. Like, God is good. I'm just happy to be making a living.
Absolutely, man. And within that living, when we look at the actual, title of this particular panel, Redefining Wealth, right? When did you redefine what wealth meant to you? At what point in your career? I mean, I think we all, especially coming from certain backgrounds, financial empowerment, financial literacy is still it's a stranger to us. I was talking about this with John O'Brien not too long ago. And so we may be behind the 8 ball a little bit, but when did you redefine your wealth? When did it kind of really started to make sense in a different way?
When I started to realize that, wealth in a lot of ways is subjective. There's people that are living in South Carolina right now who might be making $50,000, $60,000 a year, but they got a roof over their head, they got food on their table, and they're happy. They're able to, take a vacation once in a while. They may have a couple of dollars to put into the stock market, but more important, they might have, just enough to make sure that they're, they have childcare, or just to be able to afford the type of car that can get them from A to B, but the main thing is that they're happy. So, for me, that's what wealth really means to me. You're doing what it is that you love to do, or whatever you're doing, you're just happy doing it. That's why I always even tell people that success is subjective. Like, what's success to you may not be success, to another individual. For me, it's just, I feel good just waking up in the morning. I feel good being able to wake up in the morning, say my prayers, read my daily affirmations, do my meditation, do my therapy, once a week, and just have a peace of mind. That's happiness to me. So when we talk, when we have these conversations about wealth, we can't just keep them in the financial aspect of the conversation, because I know a lot of financially wealthy people who are not happy. In any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, coming from the world where we have to cover money all the time. You look around certain rooms, like, man, you have all of this and you're still not happy. Well, what the hell is wealth? When we talk, you talk to a lot of people, celebrities, politicians, and all of that. And John told us to keep politics out of it, so we're not gonna go down that road. But are there any misconceptions that you always hear when it comes down to wealth building? Because again, we're in this age now, and I understand the equity conversation. I think maybe that's went a little bit too far, and people lost track of what that is. We'll get to that in a minute. But what misconceptions do you often hear that maybe isn't talked about enough when it comes down to wealth building, keeping in mind the mentality and the mental part of it?
I think the biggest, problem with wealth conversations is that, we be a lot of us in our culture, we take business advice from people who ain't got no business.
Yeah.
What I mean? There's a lot of people out here, there's a lot of people out here making money by telling folks how to make money, but the people they talking to not making any money, right? So it's just like, I always tell John, one of the reasons I like him is because he actually has a business. And I think that's the main thing we have to do when we're listening to people have these conversations. Like, okay, it's one thing to talk, but what do you actually do? What is your actual business? Can you point to your staff? Can you point to your board? Can you point to how much you paid in taxes for your business last year? Like, there's a lot of different, things that go with running a business. And a lot of these so-called, gurus out here just spreading a whole lot of misinformation, but they don't have any foundation to stand on. So the first thing I would tell anyone when they're listening to somebody talk financials, see how that person actually makes their money and see how long they have been making money doing what it is that they're doing. If they're making money, if their hustle is making money telling you how to make money and you're not making no money, that's probably not somebody you should be talking to.
Yeah. And that's a perfect, segue, because later on, but I'll get to it right now, I was going to ask you, I think we're getting out of this cancel culture, conversation that we're in, but at the same time, is there anything that within our culture that needs to be canceled when it comes down to that economic empowerment? Like, what needs to be canceled for us to move forward? I was looking at a Wall Street Journal piece, and I believe it was about $70 trillion, right, in wealth transfer that's happening right now up until 2042, right? And so when you think about the next big wealth transfer post 2042, what needs to be canceled within this culture right now, our culture, so that way we can be a part of that economic empowerment, a part of that economic balance?
What needs to be canceled is listening to people who don't have any business. Listen to people.
Was that the thing?
Yeah. Listen to people who are actually doing things, who have already, made money in the past. They've built businesses in the present, and they're looking towards the future. Like, there's plenty of people that you can talk to right now that can tell you exactly, where things are going as far as, the economy is concerned. They can tell you exactly where things are going as far as business is concerned. But, we got to be willing to listen. And one thing that's the problem now is everybody is an expert. So you can have somebody come on a platform like the Breakfast Club, like whether it's a John O'Brien or Damon John or any of these people who have already done it, and they can tell you how they've done it and they can tell you where things are going. But then you'll have a bunch of people who've never done anything, all in the comments telling them that they lying, they wrong.
Yeah.
They don't know what they talking about. Why would I listen to those people who've never built anything opposed to listening to people who've actually built something? Like right now, this is a fantastic event, the Dream Forward event, a new business plan for America. This is John continuously doing something. He's been doing something for years with Operation Hope, but now today is another day where he's continuously doing something. Why wouldn't I listen to an individual like that? Like, all we got to do is pay attention to the people who, already walked the path. That's it.
Yeah. According to Nielsen, Charlamagne, man, and I always bring this stat up, and I was just talking about it with John at the NASDAQ. We were talking, but according to Nielsen, by next year, Black America's spending power will reach 2.1 trillion, right? Let that sink in. 2.1 trillion. That is bigger than the GDP of Mexico, tied with the GDP of Canada, our two trading partners here in North America. When you think about that figure in 2026, that our spending power in Black America will be 2.1 trillion, what comes to mind?
The same thing that's, come to my mind forever. When I first read Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when you study what, Marcus Garvey was doing, when you think about, just the whole do for self motto. We've been talking about unity and group operation forever. Black people have been talking about, pooling their resources forever. Black people have been talking about, supporting each other and, spending with each other forever. So when you see all of that money that we're spending making other people rich, it's like, why don't we support our own? We don't need anybody else. Like, we are absolutely positively enough.
Yeah. Right fast, man. You're from South Carolina. Again, you spent time in Philly. You're up here in New York, as am I. But a lot of times we miss what's going on in rural America. I live with one might consider in rural America right now in part of Jersey. I've been down to Tulsa. I've seen the food deserts. I've seen the bank deserts. When it comes to economic empowerment, we always talk, it's just urban cities, it's big cities. We focus on them. But is there anything that you're saying in rural America that's not being discussed, that's not being addressed, where if it was, it can help us reach that economic empowerment that much faster?
Well, rural America is the real world.
That's
you
right.
know, like, you know, I think we have this. That's another big misconception that, you know, America looks like LA and America looks like, you know, New York City. The reality of the situation is, no, America looks like Moncks Corner, South Carolina. Like, those are, you know, working class people. I grew up on a dirt road where, you know, my first white friend, who's still my friend to this day, his name was Thomas Evans, and, you know, him and his father and his mother used to live right next door to, you know, my mother and my father. And, you know, it wasn't about race, it was about class. You
That's
know,
right.
That's literally what it was all about. It was about class. And, you know, one thing that we all, you know, was instilled in us was just working hard, because we didn't know any other way. And, you know, we talk about entrepreneurship. You know, some of my first entrepreneurial endeavors was, you know, walking around seeing who needed their grass cut. And that's what we all were doing, you know. So I think, you know, one of the just that's the biggest thing that I think that people need to learn from rural America, that, yo, those folks, we definitely exist. And, you know, when you can talk directly to them, especially if you're Black, because in the South, what, 60% of all Black people in America live in the South. So if you want to actually see what's going on, you know, in Black America, if you want to see what the soul of Black America looks like, you need to be in those rural areas, you know, in the South.
Yeah. I'm not going to take up too much time. I want to end it on this, John, because there's another part of that conversation, part of this title, that I definitely wanted to get your opinion on, and that's that self-determination part. When you think about the self-determination part, I mean, that's the definition is a group of individuals that does things for themselves, right? They make the choice to control their own lives.
Yeah, okay.
When it comes to that self-determination, how can what needs to be fixed in our culture for us to get past that hurdle? Because again, that it's a two sides of the economic empowerment. The self-determination, you know, part of it is the other one.
So, Jabari, you asking me?
I'm asking Charlamagne, yeah, but then we can shift it back to you, John.
No. So first of all, so Dr. Bernice King needs to go lay a wreath for her father in a couple minutes. So I'm gonna
Absolutely.
we're gonna let her speak. But Jabari, thanks for doing this. Look, yeah. I wanted to say this. I don't know if people are sleeping on Charlamagne's brilliance. He said a couple things here that I think are the most important things, arguably, in the entire session today. He said one thing, that success is different for everybody. And you making $60,000 a year, you're able to buy a modest house, get the car you like, or, you know, an apartment or whatever works for you. You've got your kids, you know, on a positive track. You're happy. Good. Cool. That may be the model for most people. So, but we want to make sure that you got the power and the self-determination, the agency, and the tools to go do those things. That's why we produce this business plan for Black America and Latino America and Asian America, et cetera, and rural America. The second thing is he's had a white friend his whole life. I've had white friends my whole life, Latino, Asian friends I grew up with. The biggest population of poverty is still poor white. Nobody knows that. So this is a good segue to Dr. King, because her father gave his life fighting for not just the rights of Black people. The Poor People campaign was about everybody, including poor whites in rural America. So thank you, Charlamagne. Thank you, Dr. Jabari Young, and now Dr. Bernice King.
Dr. Bernice King. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to take away from her.
Oh, God, that's funny.